might come
Don't
up.
any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a time where we're going to look back to this time and go, those were the days. Those were the golden years. We don't see it. We're missing it. It's right now happening. Take it in. Remember it, because the academics that we're bringing on are some of the most cutthroat, critical, just awesome academics we've had rolling out. Earlier today, I had Dr. Dennis R. McDonald, and one of his students he was taught by is Dr. Richard C. Miller. Dr. Richard C. Miller learned under Dennis R. McDonald and several other academics we've had on, John J. Collins. I mean, you name it, right? Charles Worth, all sorts of scholars along his path. And then he finally found classicist New Testament kind of scholarship. So let's introduce our guest, Dr. Richard C. Miller. Welcome back to MythVision.
Hey, Derek, it's good to be here, man. I have a question for you. Is it too sexy, or if I go like that, is that too sexy? Which way should I go? Is it too much? Too much. Yeah.
They got to pay to play. You
got to back that off.
Come on now. Look,
it's good to see you.
Love you, man. I really do. We've not only got a working friendship through what we do here in educating, but also personal friendship. Most of the scholars I have on are my friends, and you and me spent a couple hours one day laughing our asses off. I mean, let's keep it real. Let's take off the sensitivity. Let's hang out. You can put the scholar cap on along the way, but when you're reading a man like Lucian of Samosata, who wants you to kind of chuckle, who wants you to see the humor, it's like Jerry Springer in a text, but way better than Jerry Springer. It's about to show some drama. And he wrote about a guy. I want you to introduce who this character is, but we have to laugh about this. We have to chuckle together as we're going to read through this text today. You're going to see stuff that mirrors the Gospels and also modern preachers, modern cult leaders, if you will. There's a lot of stuff going on. So anyway, Dr. Miller, where do we begin here? Do you want to introduce him? Do you want to just first say something to the audience? What should we be ready for? I don't care what you want to say.
Yeah, I just want to say first that Lucian's one of my favorite. He's probably my favorite author of all of the ancient texts. I mean, there's no one very few that I've had such a good time reading. Philostratus is another one that I really, really enjoy. Some Seneca. But in terms of just enjoying reading something from antiquity, Lucian's, it's tough to beat him. He's just got this really, really punchy, almost dark satire, kind of satirical way. And it just gets you laughing. You just can't help yourself after a while. And in the text today, this crossed right over the railroad tracks of early Christianity right here. And so he's dealing with an individual who was a high-ranking, according to Lucian, the highest-ranking teacher in the 2nd century, second only to Jesus. He was deified even. We're going to read that today, that the early Christians even dealt with him as a god. They venerated this guy so much. Proteus Peregrinus, he helped to teach, unpack, expositor of ancient, of sacred texts for the Christians, and he also wrote several himself. And it's not really clear which ones he wrote. It's probable, it may even be likely and probable that some of the texts that we have surviving now that are pseudepigraphical or pseudonymous rather, may have come from his own pen. And so Lucian's gonna basically, this is a damnatio memoriae. In other words, he is going to level a scathing critique of this guy as in a way that few have received, I think. And so this is fun. He deconverted. So just to give a little bit more context before we read, just to frame, Proteus deconverted from Christianity in some way and became a cynic philosopher in his own right, and tried to mimic some of the things that went on with Jesus. And we're going to see how that plays out in the narrative. And so.
Absolutely. Look, everybody hit the like button, share this bad boy out. I'm excited. I think that people are going to laugh with us along the way in hearing this, but also might actually get people to go, whoa, that's eerily similar to something I've heard before. Lucian of Samosata 2, you've painted this picture for me on phone where you say, hey, this guy's literally from the neck of the woods where Christianity starts here in Syria. He's in Syria, Galilee-ish Syria area. So he's kind of up here in the same region where we would expect the Galileans and other types of groups to have arisen. And so he is like front row seat VIP watching the cult. Not only this guy that he supposedly knows people who know Lucian, and he's a contemporary eyewitness of this guy Peregrinus Proteus. And so he's an eyewitness firsthand, but he also knows about the Jesus movement.
Yeah.
A little bit about him. I wish we would have preserved writings about Paul or Jesus more extensively, but there is enough here, I think, for us to go, whoa, his perception of the Christians is not always favorable or not very favorable at all, really.
Yeah, this is the passing of Peregrinus. This is his death, kind of the story of his death that's being lampooned in some way. And yes, he's right in the stomping grounds. Christianity, the cradle Christianity sort of moves up into Syrophoenicia, this kind of area, Antioch, the Orontes River, in these areas on its way into like Asia Minor. And so this is the area where, and this powerful intellectual writer, he's really almost like a popular writer in some ways. He's writing for all sorts of different audiences, but he's a cultural critic, and he's right there, right in he's in the middle of the 2nd century, writing and watching all of this play out. And eventually, as reflecting back on the death of Proteus. Now, there's a lot of other writers that talked about Proteus too. We've got Eusebius, we've got Athenagoras, we've got Tertullian, we've got all kinds of early, writers from antiquity that make mention of him. And so he was a major historical figure that was known by a lot of different people through that time period. And so this wasn't like the back page on the newspaper. This is front page stuff. And so, and the stunt that he pulls off is during the Olympic Games in Olympia, which is in the Peloponnese Peninsula there in Greece, in 165. And so, I don't know if you want to tee this up, but we can dig into the text. Oh, I do want to say to the viewers though, it's a bit of a long text, and so you got to hang out for the punchlines and stuff at the end. There's going to be a little bit of sledding through some stuff, and enjoy it. But just know that we're gonna get there, and it's gonna be worth it. So
it is going to be worth it, and I hope everyone's chuckling with us. Useful charts. Go subscribe. I've got an interview with Matt Baker right now for members only. Thank you, Matt, for becoming a member of the channel. Seriously, he's sending me more charts. I got more charts from him. We also have Salem, new member, and 3BL, 3Boy Live. Thank you so much for being members of MythVision. But seriously, go subscribe to Matt Baker's Useful Charts. He's got almost a couple million subscribers, and he's doing some awesome stuff. Stay tuned. Again, fair warning, it's a pretty good text, but it's lots of detail. But you cut me off, or do you want to read? Do you want me to read it and you just cut me off and then make commentary?
Yeah, let's have you do the reading so it's consistent for folks, and I'll maybe raise my hand or something if I have a comment.
All I ask is if you're watching this at some point during your own journey, get a copy of Resurrection and Reception in Early Christianity. Dr. Richard C. Miller's book and leave a good review on the channel or on Amazon. Sorry. Give him a good review for the book and tell us what your thoughts are about it. Oh, someone named Derek Lambert left one already. Oh, interesting. So yeah.
I want to leave a plug for useful charts too. My son, who's 11, adores useful charts. He's got like 10 of them on his wall. You saw it, Derek.
Yes.
Yeah, he is the biggest fan, and I told him that that you might have him on your channel there, and so he got very excited about that. So
absolutely, yeah. Matt Baker, that's the kid. I sent you the video and was like, "Hey, bro, he is a history buff. He loves your stuff." And anyway, I sent you the little clip.
Yeah, that's right, Matt Baker.
Yep.
He's excellent. Yeah.
Thank you. Get his book again, Amazon. We might go through these quotes. I don't know if you want to do that now, if you want to wait so we can get some background based on the text. What do you want to do?
We could circle back to some of those. Just know that it's interesting. These are some other quotes that from antiquity. We can go back to some of these, or they might come up along the way. But just know that he had fans. There were people that really venerated Proteus Peregrinus, and so we're seeing it through a satirical lens, kind of a really acerbic, Lucian doesn't hold back. But just know that there were followers and devotees that really believed in this guy, and he was a celebrity in the ancient world. He's going to get torn down here in this particular track. So,
yeah. Here we go. Lucian of Samosata, The Passing of Peregrinus. I'm using Tertullian.org. An account of the life and death of a cynic philosopher who for a time in his early life went over to Christianity, practicing it to the point of imprisonment under a very tolerant administration, and after returning to Cynicism, became in his old age so enamored of Indic ideas and precedents, the East, that he cremated himself at Olympia just after the games of AD 165, even as Chalanus had done at Susa in the presence of Alexander the Great, and as Zarmaris had done at Athens after initiation into the mysteries in the presence of Augustus. Writing soon after the event, of which he was a witness, Lucian makes his main theme the story of what went on at Olympia. The earlier life of Peregrinus is portrayed incidentally in a speech attributed by Lucian to someone whose name he did not know, but clearly made by Lucian himself. Lucian believes himself to be exposing a sham, whose zeal was not at all for truth, but only for applause and renown. Many notable modern critics, including Zeller, Bernays, Croiset, I'm probably butchering these, and Willem Moetz, forgive me, dissent from his interpretation, discerning in the man an earnest seeker after truth. For to them, thirst for glory is not an adequate explanation of his final act. This point of view hardly embodies sufficient recognition of the driving force that motive with Greeks. The driving force of that motive with Greeks, and particularly Greeks of the 2nd century. Greek writers recognized it as a possible explanation of the behavior of Chalanus and Zarmaris. In this case, Lucian not only knew the man, but knew others who knew him. For instance, Demonax. Assuredly, the interpretation that he gives is not his alone. Perhaps it is not so far wrong after all. Certainly, there are authentic features in it, like the attempt of Proteus to get back the inheritance he had previously renounced and bestowed upon his native city, which make it impossible to see him in the earnest and steadfast man, or to see him the earnest and steadfast man that Aulus Gellius thought him. Now, are we ready? I just figured I'd read a little preface there.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, cut me off anytime you think it's necessary, because this work actually highlights some of Dr. Miller's own observations about the Gospels, the crafty invention, if you will, of the Jesus narratives. Best wishes from Lucian to Cronius. Unlucky Peregrinus, or as he delighted to style himself, Proteus, has done exactly what Proteus in Homer did. After turning into everything for the sake of notoriety and achieving any number of transformations, here at last he has turned into fire. So great, it seems, was the love of notoriety that possessed him, and now your genial friend has got himself carbonified after the fashion of Empedocles, except that the latter at least tried to escape observation when he threw himself into the crater, while this gentleman waited for that one of the Greek festivals which draws the greatest crowds, heaped up a very large pyre, and leaped into it before all those witnesses. He even addressed the Greeks on the subject not many days before his venture. I think I can see you laughing heartily at the old man's driveling idiocy. Indeed, I hear you giving tongue as you naturally would. Oh, the stupidity. Oh, the vain glory. Oh, everything else that we are in the habit of saying about it all. Well, you are doing this at a distance and with far greater security. But I said it right by the fire, and even earlier in a great crowd of listeners, angering some of them, as many as admired the old man's foolhardiness, but there were others beside myself who laughed at him. However, I narrowly missed getting torn limb from limb for you by the cynics, just as Actaeon was by his dogs, or his cousin Pentheus by the Maenads. I love how he writes this. It's so funny.
Let me throw in a couple comments there. So, so basically, he draws some associations with. If you could scroll up to the first paragraph there that we read. What was it? Okay. So in there, he talks about Proteus and Homer, who was a sea god, and so a little bit can be lost there if you're not familiar with that guy. He's almost like a shapeshifter. He could change into fire or into any of the other elements and this kind of thing. He's an old man in the text, a sea god. And so he's trying to make fun that, that because Proteus dies of fire, that he had also transformed into fire, and he's making fun of him there. There's kind of a, the carbonified. Empedocles is another fun one. He's actually in my book. He's one of the highlighted in the gallery. He's a very famous philosopher who jumped into a volcano, the volcano on Mount Etna, which is still active today. You could see, I think there's even like a National Geographic episode about it, this volcano there in Sicily. And so anyway, he jumps into this volcano, and the idea is for his body to disappear, because if the missing body would then indicate that he had been translated to become a deity. And so it's kind of his strategy according to the translation fable, for him to want to be deified so that his body would go missing. And so he intentionally does this as a strategy, which is exactly the strategy that Proteus here is trying to pull off. But Lucian's not going to let him get away with it in terms of it resulting in his glory at the end of this text, but more his folly. Anyway. Yeah. And so another comment just also on cynics, for those that might not be familiar with cynic philosophy, it's where we get the word canine in English, the dogs, the cynics. These are people that lived like out on the street. They would have just like a cloak or a tunic and maybe like a, bedroll or a purse or something like this. And they had kind of a ultra minimalistic lifestyle intentionally. They renounced the world, and they would just criticize and kind of bark, with their criticisms out on the streets, leveling criticisms at society. They had contempt for the world in some way, and so they symbolized that kind of ascetic kind of attitude in the cities throughout the empire. And so Jesus also is regarded in much scholarship as a kind of cynic philosopher in his own way. And so there's a lot of writing on that. So anyway, we can move forward. Yeah.
Okay. The complete, I don't know if this is mise en scene of the affair, was as follows. You know, of course, what the playwright was like and what spectacular performances he presented his whole life long, outdoing Sophocles and Aeschylus. As for my part in it, as soon as I came to Elis and going up by way of the gymnasium, I overheard a cynic bawling out the usual street corner invocations to virtue in a loud, harsh voice and abusing everyone without exception. Then His harangue, is that how you pronounce that, harangue?
Harangue, yeah.
Then his harangue wound up with Proteus. And to the best of my ability, I shall try to quote for you the very words he said. You will find the style familiar, of course, as you have often stood near them while they were ranting. Does anyone dare, he said, to call Proteus vainglorious, O earth, O sun, O river, O sea, O Heracles, god of our fathers? Proteus, who was imprisoned in Syria, who denounced 5,000 talents in favor of his native hand, who was banished from the city of Rome, who is more conspicuous than the sun, who is able to rival Olympian Zeus himself, because he has resolved to depart from life by way of fire. Are there people who attribute this to vainglory? Why did not Heracles do so? Did not Asclepius and Dionysus by grace of the thunderbolt? Did not Empedocles end by leaping into the crater? Did you want to comment on that? You want me to keep rolling?
Yeah, almost all those guys you'll notice are in the gallery, and they all died, spectacular deaths that resulted in their translation in some way, at least in ancient legend. And so Zeus's thunderbolt is what's being referenced there. By the grace of the thunderbolt, they were translated by, being struck by the thunderbolt. And so to become deities. And so these were men that became gods, so to speak, at least in the legend, that particular trope. And so he's making comparisons here, trying to put Proteus in the same league.
Yeah, and I imagine many people probably did actually believe him to be this, right?
That's right.
Okay, so, and that ended that quote. So why Theagenes? For that was the baller's name, said that. I asked a bystander, what is the meaning of this talk about fire, and what have Heracles and Empedocles to do with Proteus? Before long, he replied, Proteus is going to burn himself up at the Olympic festival. How, said I, and why? Then he undertook to tell me, but the cynic was bawling so that it was impossible to hear anyone else. I listened, therefore, while he flooded us with the rest of his bilge water. Is that how you say that, bilge?
Yeah.
Bilge
bio water. Bio.
Oh, bio water.
No, bilge. You're right.
Okay, sorry. I'm not 100% sure. And got off a lot of amazing hyperbole about Proteus for not deigning to compare him with the man of Sinope. Or is it Sinope?
Yeah, that's Diogenes. He's the most famous, kind of like the grandfather of the whole Cynic tradition. The man of, it's a kind of a reference or an allusion to him.
Okay. Or his teacher Antisthenes, or even with Socrates himself. He summoned Zeus to the lists. Then, however, he decided to keep them about equal and thus concluded his speech. These are the two noblest masterpieces that the world has seen, the Olympian Zeus and Proteus. Of the one, the creator and artist was Phidias. Of the other, nature. But now this holy image is about to depart from among men to gods, borne on the wings of fire, leaving us bereft. After completing this discourse with copious perspiration, he shed tears in a highly ridiculous way and tore his hair, taking care not to pull very hard. And at length he was led away, sobbing as he went, by some of the cynics who strove to comfort him. I can see Christians like literally in church at like a worship session, or a pastor giving a message, literally doing this for Jesus, by the way.
Yeah, this is I've talked a lot about exaltatio memoriae and damnatio memoriae. This particular cynic who's out speaking on behalf of Proteus, leading up to his stunt there, is giving the exaltatio memoriae. Prior to his death, even, he's already, exalting him to the level of Zeus himself. And so this is just fun.
Yeah, it is. It is. After him, another man went up at once, not permitting the throng to disperse, but pouring a libation on the previous sacrificial offerings while they were still ablaze. At first, he laughed a long time and obviously did it from the heart. Then he began somewhat after this fashion. Since that accursed Theagenes, is that how you say that, Theagenes?
Yes.
Theagenes terminated his pestilential remarks with the tears of Heraclitus. I, on the contrary, shall begin with the laughter of Democritus. And again, He went on laughing a long time, so that he drew most of us into doing likewise. Then changing countenance, he said, "Pray, what else, gentlemen, are we to do when we hear utterances so ridiculous, and see old men all but standing on their heads in public for the sake of a little despicable notoriety, that you may know what manner of thing is this holy image which is about to be burned up? Give me your ears, for I have observed his character and kept an eye on his career from the beginning, and have ascertained various particulars from his fellow citizens and people who could not have helped knowing him thoroughly." Now, is this...
Let me make a little comment here. This is a bit of a literary device. It's a bit like, how, I don't know, akin maybe to how Luke is the we passages in Acts or something like this. It's a little bit like that. This is another literary device. This is actually Lucian. He's talking about himself in the third person as the man who got up to speak. He's the one that's going to now make laughter of the situation rather than the other guy that was, crying these fake tears and all this stuff. And
so he is speaking like, listen, I'm going to tell you, I know people who know him. I know citizens from his own place. I've done my investigation. I'm going to give you a whole different, a different take here.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's about to get juicy. All right.
Yeah. So, at one point there, we kind of glossed over, and I can't even see the passage.
Do you want me to
there,
show?
But it said something about the burning of sacrifices, and so just to draw the connection there, that this kind of stunt that Proteus is going, sacrificial offerings, the libation, what is it? Permitted to disperse the libation. Yeah, while the offerings were still ablaze. Now it's talking about, this is a reference to, it refers to what the prior cynic had been talking about, but it's also a reference to the ritual as kind of what Proteus had done was seen as ritual in some way. And that this was in fact seen as a kind of a sacrificial act, a symbolic act that mirrored ancient animal sacrifice in some way, what Proteus was trying to do, which also I think echoes back to Jesus in that way. As his own execution, he set his face like flint. In the same way Proteus is setting his face like flint. He's going to die at the Olympic Games, though, as a stunt in front of throngs and throngs of people.
Well, couldn't you say if we were to play a tape back, pretending that everything documented is historical to some degree? I mean, him going to Jerusalem, making noise in front of all the crowds that are there in order to kind of stir up in the temple. Like, how's that not a public stunt? You know what I mean?
That's a bit like death by cop, the way, the temple incident. If you want to put that into like a historical chronology there, it's not surprising that he was on trial and kind of fast tracked to execution, given kind of the, I don't think you get to go into the temple and start whipping people and flipping tables. And that's the nice version. That's the sanitized Gospels version. If that is a historical moment, which I suspect it may be, then you're dealing with something that was really ugly and that needed to be stamped out by, in terms of the way it was viewed by the local magistrates and authorities and so forth.
So just so we're on the same page, after him, another man, that's Lucian, went up at once. So Lucian's walking up and, he, not permitting the throng to disperse, but pouring a libation on the previous. At first, he laughed a long time and obviously did it from the heart. So this is Lucian. Lucian, you're saying third person. And then he began someone after this fashion, since the accursed Diogenes terminated his pestilential remarks with tears of Heraclitus, I, on the contrary, shall begin with laughter. So he's about to mock the crap out of him, but also saying, like, look, I know people, you guys see this holy image, but I know some particulars about this fellow man. And so he's publicly about to expose what we're about to read.
That's right.
All right. This creation and masterpiece of nature, this Polycletian canon, as soon as he came of age, was taken in adultery in Armenia and got a sound thrashing, but finally jumped down from the roof and made his escape, with a radish stopping his tent. His vent. Sorry. With a radish stopping his vent. Then he corrupted a handsome boy, and by paying 3,000 drachmas to the boy's parents, who were poor, bought himself off from being brought before the governor of the province of Asia. Holy moly. So he was caught sleeping with a lady and then escaped with his life.
Yeah.
And then he's also corrupting a young, handsome boy, kind of hinting at probably sexual stuff here.
Yes.
Pays 3,000 to the poor family, drachmas, and it got him from having to be brought before the governor of the province of Asia.
That's right. That's right. They're going to paint him as kind of a carnival man, like it's just a flim flam man. It's great.
Oh my gosh. So this is exposing the guy. Imagine what we don't have for some of the early Christian material, early Christians. I mean, imagine what their stuff looked like. Okay. This is a Christian. What am I talking about? This guy was a Christian, right?
Yeah, it's about to get into that in the next couple paragraphs here.
Okay. I will just continue then, and you cut me off. How about that?
Okay.
All this and the like of it, I propose to pass over, for he was still unshapen clay, and our holy image, talking about Peregrinus or Proteus, had not yet been consummated for us. What he did to his father, however, is very well worth hearing, but you all know it. You have heard how he strangled the aged man, unable to tolerate his living beyond 60 years. Then, when the affair had been noised abroad, he condemned himself to exile and roamed about, going to one country after another. Here's the juicy stuff. It was then that he learned the wondrous lore of the Christians by associating with their priests and scribes in Palestine. And how else could it be? In a trice, he made them all look like children, for he was prophet, cult leader, head of the synagogue, and everything, all by himself. He interpreted and explained some of their books and even composed many, and they revered him as a god, made use of him as a lawgiver, and set him down as a protector. Next after that other, to be sure, whom they still worship, the man who was crucified in Palestine because he introduced this new cult into the world. Whew. I feel like you might need to say something about this.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could see there kind of some of Lucian's attitude about Christianity generally, just that this guy, he's trying to scorch this guy, and by associating him so deeply in the Christian world, you could tell that he has a similar kind of opinion about that entire kind of movement that's going on. And so, yeah. And just that he was exalted to the highest in that, it said next to Christ himself, just second in command, like in the hierarchy there in terms of second century people, at least from the standpoint that Lucian had. And he's writing to everyone. And so I don't think you have to give him some credibility here, because this is how it would have been perceived generally, the way he's painting him here. Yeah, it's distorted, but at the same time, though, he doesn't have any reason to, miss the mark in terms of characterizing him as one of the top leaders.
One of the things that stood out, lore, like the way he immediately characterized Christians, right? Their lore. So he's seeing them as telling tall tales, lore. They have a fiction, by associating with their priests and scribes, right? So he's dealing with their most educated, and the fact that he made them look like children. So he's clearly their master, their father. He was prophet, cult leader, head of the synagogue, and everything, all by himself. That's pretty powerful stuff. And that he literally composed many of their books. So he explained some of the books and even composed many. So like this guy is like, he's somebody significant. If he's composing literature for them, wow.
That's right. Deal. That's right. And he's going to go on to say that this is all possible because of the gullibility of the Christians to, accept such a charlatan and elevate him to such high ranks, that this is all even just made possible because of their credulity, their fideist kind of posture toward, learning and knowing. Yeah. And that they're subject, they're gullible and easily taken in by someone like this. And so, Yeah.
Oh, so good. Okay. Then at length, Proteus was apprehended for this and thrown into prison. Well, for what? I think he's talking about his father. So I imagine they're talking about how he choked his father. I'm not sure.
Killed him.
Yeah, he killed him, strangled him.
Killed his own father. Yeah.
At length, Proteus was apprehended for this and thrown into prison, which itself gave him no little reputation as an asset for his future career, and the charlatanism and notoriety seeking that he was enamored of. Well, when he had been imprisoned, the Christians, regarding the incident as a calamity, left nothing undone in the That's so funny how he writes this. Left nothing undone in the effort to rescue him. Then, as this was impossible, every other form of attention was shown him, not in any casual way, but with assiduity. Is that how you pronounce that? Assiduity?
Assiduity? That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Assiduous. It's that, basically that they're, bending over backwards to help him. And
bending their asses toward them. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. In any casual way, but with assiduity. And from the very break of day, aged widows and orphan children could be seen waiting near the prison, while their officials even slept inside with him after bribing the guards. Then elaborate meals were brought in, and sacred books of theirs were read aloud. An excellent Peregrinus, for he still went by that name, was called by them the new Socrates.
Yeah, that's that. What kind of, I don't know if your viewers recognize just Socrates isn't famous now, but in the ancient world, he was the most famous of all the philosophers. Like and they're saying this is the second Socrates here. We've got we've got him right here in front of us, living and breathing. And this was how he was reputed to be among the Christians. Wow. Just really, they were really taken with this guy.
Okay. Indeed, people came even from the cities in Asia, sent by the Christians at their common expense to succor. Is that succor?
Yes.
To succor and defended and encourage the hero. They show incredible speed whenever any such public action is taken, for in no time they lavish their all. So it was then in the case of Peregrinus, much money came to him from them by reason of his imprisonment, and he procured not a little revenue from it, meaning he got a lot of money out of it.
Yeah.
The poor wretches, I love how he writes this, the poor wretches have convinced themselves, first and foremost, that they are going to be immortal and live for all time. That's like the doctrine of Christianity in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
In consequence of which they despise death and even willingly give themselves into custody, most of them. Furthermore, their first lawgiver, Jesus, persuaded them that they are all brothers of one another after they have transgressed once, for all by denying the Greek gods and by worshiping that crucified sophist himself and living under his laws. Therefore, they despise all things indiscriminately and consider them common property, receiving such doctrines traditionally without any definite evidence. So if any charlatan and trickster able to profit by occasions comes among them, he quickly acquires sudden wealth by imposing upon simple folk.
Yeah, let me comment just a second there. So I want to key in on, there's so much there we could talk about. That's just great. But one of the things there, this idea that they're accepting things despite lack of evidence, like that's basically kind of their modus operandi is, if you could, and Galen, the physician who wrote similarly through that period, made the same observation. In fact, he described them in a briefer, just a few sentences. He described all of the Christians with just the statement that these are people that are accepting stories and things without any evidence. That's what they're up to. That's what they're trying to do. And so that was his kind of nutshell description of what early Christianity was. In passing, this is a doctor. He had no real stake. He wasn't even trying to criticize them per se. He just in passing, oh yeah, these guys over here, that's what they're doing. And now let's move on to other topics.
Yeah.
You know.
And you know, quick personal note for me and you, I think that we thought we had evidence, or at least we believed there was, because we were living in a time where there was apologetics that were trying to do evidential claims. But in fact, the more we look at the evidence points toward literary invention, fictional creativity, cultic, emulation of other cult type activity. It's like the more we realized, oh snap, what are we doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I think even to some extent, the early Christians variously understood this, but he wants to critique those, the most devoted, the most kind of indulgent in these stories and kind of where they're coming from. And he's saying that it's because of that. It's in fact because of that kind of disposition or that kind of orientation that they had toward accepting whatever came their way in terms of stories and tall tales. It's because of that someone like Proteus is even possible, that someone like that, because the guy, he did not need credibility. They just embraced him right out of the gate with almost no filter, and just let this guy, elevated him all the way up to the top, and here he was. And that's, I think, the kind of on the track of what we're getting with Lucian in terms of trying to paint this picture of this guy who's basically almost just like a flim-flam man that's moving from town to town and getting kicked out of places and, getting into trouble here and scrapes there and exploiting situations and this kind of thing. And so,
yeah,
it's a good time.
I think it's hilarious. So if any charlatan and tricks are able to profit by occasions comes among them, he quickly acquires sudden wealth by imposing upon simple folk. Don't want to get political, but God knows you want to win a political seat somewhere, just aim for the heart of the Christians, I promise, in America, and you're guaranteed to at least have a potential chance at winning. You can bullshit them and they will buy it as long as it fits their mythic belief system that they support. They'll back you. It works today as much as it probably did back then. And Solera Knight super chatted. Thank you so much for that super chat. To trick the Christians with a literary fictional character such as Jesus Christ is a far grander usurpation than Peregrinus for early millennium clandestine conspirators. To trick the Christians with a literary fictional character such as Jesus Christ, the far grander usurpation than Peregrinus for early millennium clandestine conspirators. Well, I mean, you could look at Paul as another Peregrinus. I mean, he literally goes to martyrdom. He's a cult leader type. He sees himself as a prophet in the last days, potentially even as some type of philosopher too, because the language he uses in the letters, there's all sorts of, if you think the guy existed too, that's another thing. But did you want to comment on that, or do you want to keep going? Or
no, I think it's a fair comment. Basically, that you've got a set of stories and people buying into that. It's very similar in terms of what you get with Proteus. You don't end up with a world religion with Proteus Peregrinus for various reasons, but there was a movement and a following, and it was competing alongside Christianity in some way, and had a lot of mimetic kind of similarities and analogs. And so in terms of what this guy was trying to do, and he was trying to model, as he was using that as a template in some way for him to kick off his own thing. And so, yeah.
Thank you so much, Solera. I appreciate that. However, Peregrinus was freed by the then governor of Syria, a man who was fond of philosophy, aware of his recklessness, and that he would gladly die in order that he might leave behind him a reputation for it. He freed him, not considering him worthy even of the usual chastisement. Upon returning to his home, he found that the matter of his father's murder was still at fever heat, and that there were many who were for pressing the charge against him. Most of his possessions had been carried off during his absence, and only his farms remained, amounting to 15 talents. For the entire property which the old man left had been worth perhaps 30 talents, not 5,000 as that utterly ridiculous Theagenes asserted. Even the entire, so he's talking about one of the cult followers of Proteus who's defending him, saying he gave up 5,000 drachas or whatever the names. Yeah. So he's like attacking their apologist, right? Like we're kind of doing often on our channel.
That was like I said, that's an exaltatio, and now we're getting the damnatio. He's giving them the dirty story, the dirt on this guy. And so here's what really is going on.
That utterly ridiculous Theagenes asserted, even the entire city of Perium, taking along with it the 5 that are its neighbors, would not fetch that much, including the men, the cattle, and all the rest of their belongings. However, the charge and complaint was still aglow, and it was probable that before long somebody would appear against him. Above all, the people themselves were enraged, mourning over a good old man, as he was called by those who had seen him, so impiously slain. But observe what a plan our clever Proteus discovered to cope with all this, and how he escaped the danger. Coming before the assembly of the Parians, he wore his hair long by now, dressed in a dirty mantle, had a wallet slung at his side, the staff was in his hand, and in general, he was very histrionic in his get-up, manifesting himself to them in this guise. He said that he relinquished to the state all the property which had been left him by his father of blessed memory. When the people, poor folk, agape for largeness, heard that, they lifted their voices forthwith. The one and only philosopher, the one and only patriot, the one and only rival of Diogenes and Crates. His enemies were muzzled, and anyone who tried to mention the murder was at once pelted with stones. This is so good. Oh, he left home then for the second time to roam about, possessing an ample source of funds in the Christians, through whose ministrations he lived in unalloyed prosperity. For a time he battened himself thus, but then, after he had transgressed in some way even against them, he was seen, I think, eating some of the food that is forbidden them. They no longer accepted him. And so, being at a loss, he thought he must sing a palinode and demand his possessions back from his city. Submitting a petition, he expected to recover them by order of the emperor. Then, as the city sent representatives to oppose the claim, he achieved nothing, but was directed to abide by what he had once for all determined, under no compulsion from anyone. Thereafter, he went away a third time to Egypt to visit Athacobulus. I'm not sure how. Agathobulus?
Yeah, it sounds right to me.
Yeah, Agathobulus, where he took that wonderful course of training in asceticism, shaving one half of his head, dabbing his face with mud, and demonstrating what they call indifference by erecting his yard amid a thronging mob of bystanders, besides giving and taking blows on the backsides with a stock of fennel and playing the mountebank even more audaciously in many other ways. They're like self-flagellating here, right?
Yeah, again, it's going into like this whole idea of like severe, austere self-treatment and this kind of thing. Again, these are themes in earliest Christianity as well, as we know. And so, yeah, it's like monks were like whipping each other and like causing each other like self-harm to escape the flesh. Seems something like that. From there, thus equipped, he set sail for Italy, and immediately after disembarking, he fell to abusing everyone, and in particular the emperor, knowing him to be mild and gentle, so that he was safe in making bold. The emperor, as one would expect, cared little for his libels, and did not think fit to punish for mere words a man who only used philosophy as a cloak, and above all, a man who had made a profession of abusiveness. But in our friend's case, even, remember now, he's still standing in front of this audience that he's telling this to. Yeah.
Dude, this guy's getting the worst shit ever. Please have no one speak like this at my funeral. I swear on everything. I'm going to haunt them. Oh, Oh, this is so good. I'm like reading, and then all of a sudden I realize, damn, he's still standing in front of everyone telling this shit. Oh man. This is intense, bro. Oh, okay. But in our friend's case, even from this, his reputation grew among simple folk. Anyhow, he was a cynosure. I don't know if that's like an inside joke or something. A cynosure for his recklessness, until finally the city prefect, a wise man, packed him off for immoderate indulgence in the thing, saying that the city had no need of any such philosopher. However, this too made for his renown, and he was on everybody's lips as the philosopher who had been banished for his frankness and excessive freedom, so that in this respect he approached Musonius, Dio, Epictetus, and anyone else who has been in a similar predicament. So now his fame is rising again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just for being an asshole, literally. How many, dude? This is like another lesson for all of you con artists who might come across this video. Take notes. Be an asshole. Don't treat people with respect. Be vulgar. Be intense, intentionally, and you can rise to fame on social media by tomorrow. It's a promise. Yes, literally. This is good. This is good. All right. Continuing. Coming at last to Greece under these circumstances, at one moment he abused the Eleans, at another he counseled the Greeks to take up arms against the Romans, and at another he libeled a man outstanding in literary attainments and position because he had been a benefactor to Greece in many ways, and particularly because he had brought water to Olympia and prevented the visitors to the festival from dying of thirst, maintaining that he was making the Greeks effeminate. For the spectators of the Olympic Games ought to endure their thirst. Yes, by heaven, and even to lose their lives. No doubt, many of them, through the frequent distempers, which formerly ran riot in the vast crowd on account of the dryness of the place. And he said this while he drank that same water. Okay, break down what he's saying right here, just so everyone's getting it.
Isn't it the case? He's trying to prevent people from. He's trying to make people feel guilty for having water. Basically, they're coming. These are people that are coming fans, really coming. It'd be like the Super Bowl or the World Cup or whatever. This is the big sporting event.
Yeah.
And he's got a hut there on the lane as people are entering. Going to this, and so he's just it's kind of like a little carnival stop to come see him there. And he's got his hut, he comes out and stuff and he's trying to, basically shame people. But then he has the hypocrisy that he's going and drinking the water that he's giving everyone else, And so, yeah, he's just,
That spot where it says effeminate too, that's like a modern tough guy going, don't be a girl, know? Greeks effeminate, making the Greeks effeminate. I think he's kind of saying be a tough guy. But secretly, this dude is drinking the very water he's acting like, I don't do this. I'm tough, bro.
Right.
You know what I mean? Come on.
Exactly.
When they almost killed him with stones, mobbing him with one accord, he managed to escape death at the moment by fleeing to Zeus for sanctuary. Stout fellow. It kind of makes me think of Acts of the Apostles in some ways. And afterwards, at the next Olympiad, he gave the Greeks a speech, which he had composed during the 4 years that had intervened, praising the man who had brought in the water and defending himself for running away at that time. At last, he was disregarded by all and no longer so admired, for all his stuff was stale, and B could not. Yeah, I think the grammar here is a little off. And he could not turn out any further novelty with which to surprise those who came in his way and make them marvel and stare at him, a thing for which he had a fierce craving from the first, meaning he wants attention, right? That's what the point is. He's begging for it. Okay, so here we go. He devised this ultimate venture of the pyre and spread a report. This is getting juicy, bro. This is getting juicy. Okay. And spread a report among the Greeks immediately after the last Olympic Games that he would burn himself up at the next festival. And now they say he's playing the mountebank over that very thing, digging a pit, collecting logs, and promising really awesome fortitude. Dude, I just want to pause and just say, if I ever need attention from everyone in the audience and I say, damn it, they're not looking, they're not watching me, they don't give a shit about MythVision, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to castrate myself on Thursday. How's that sound? Somebody find my address and come and stop me, okay? Like,
I'll fly out there, Derek.
Please.
Wouldn't let you do that, man.
My goodness. I mean, the dude's collecting logs. Poor dude, so desperate for attention. The best way he can do it is like, all right, I'll burn myself up like the gods that we know. Okay, like
he's advertising it too. I mean, he's like, "Hey, come back in 4 years. This is gonna hear." You know, it's almost like it's this event that he's trying to like publicize.
Oh, this is so good. This is so good. All right, what he should have done, I think, was first and foremost to await death and not to cut and run from life. But if he had determined to be cut off at all costs, not to use fire or any of these devices out of tragedy, but to choose for his departure some other form of death out of the myriads that there are. If, however, he is partial to fire as something connected with Heracles, why in the world did he not quietly select a well-wooded mountain and cremate himself upon it in solitude, taking along, yeah, this is good. This is good. Taking along only one person, such as Theagenes here, for his Philocletes. So he's like, dude, why are you wanting everybody to watch? Why do you need all this attention? You're full of shit, dude. You want this for just your fame, your historical record, right? You don't really believe what you're saying. That's what I think he's trying to say to the crowd. What do you think?
Oh, that is, yeah. And martyrdom generally in antiquity was, you didn't do that in like hiding somewhere. You didn't go out in the woods and like, these weren't, you wanted to die in Caesar's face. You wanted like the spectacle. It was the spectacle of it. You want it to be written up in larger than life, you know, in this, you know, in the goriest possible, most, you know, vivid kind of colorful depictions in this kind of thing. It was the stunt of it all, the spectacle, the, you know, the big news of it all. You don't want to do it in hiding and this kind of thing. And that's a feature of martyrdom and of these other, you know, they were Indic philosophers that would set themselves on fire in the markets in India in antiquity. And there's a reference to that in this text as well.
Yeah. As
a kind of a stunt and just burn themselves alive in front of people and this kind of thing. Lucian's like saying, you know, if you wanted to be like Heracles, then why aren't you off like in solitude and on the mountain like he was? You know, why do you need this huge like Olympic crowd? You're like trying to pull the crowd. They're going there for the Olympics. They're not going there for you. Like,
oh my gosh. The other thing is that Heracles had justified reason to do it. Right? Like he's hurting. He can't get the suffering of the poison that's burning his skin, right? Solara and I thank you for the blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Matthew 5:9, noble. What's interesting about that is just apply the same thing to martyrdom within Christianity and that kind of glorification you get through dying, this kind of escaping this life. And that is I've had this engagement with apologists online from various backgrounds. I even had this discussion with, he's grown quite in popularity. He's kind of a right-wing apologist guy. I can't remember his name right now, but like there's a couple of them that I was arguing with. And I'm like, dude, you believe in heaven so much, go to heaven then. Why are you sitting here? And so the earliest message we get is this: lay down your life, take up the cross, kind of follow me. Of course, they've allegorized this. They've found ways to make it mean, you know, suffering. Yeah. Let's not be like the rest of the world, but we'll live out our days and like normal people. No, it seemed more literally follow the martyrdom path. And I think we could see Christianity in this.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Solara. Let's continue. On the contrary, It is in Olympia at the height of the festival, all but in the theater, that he plans to roast himself, not undeservedly, by Heracles if it is right for parasites and for atheists to suffer for their hardinesses. And from that point of view, he seems to be getting about it very late in the day. He ought long ago to have been flung into the bull of Phalaris to pay. What is that?
I don't know. It's just hilarious the way, the language he like flung. It's just
He uses like, he flittered himself. Like he's just using these funny descriptions, these adjectives that are like it's just a way with words. I love how Lucian writes.
No, and if you sit with some of these, we don't have time with the viewers, but if you sit with some of these, there are details in these descriptions that you could crack open like a nut that are just hilarious even further. I'm sure if you dug into that one, Phalaris and the bull and all of that you'd find some really fun stuff going on there.
Been flung into the bull of Phalaris to pay the fitting penalty instead of opening his mouth to the flames once and for all and expiring in a trice. For people tell me that no other form of death is quicker than that by fire. You have only to open your mouth and die forthwith. The spectacle is being planned, I suppose, as something awe-inspiring. A fellow getting burned up in a holy place where it is impious even to bury the others who die. But you have heard, no doubt, that long ago a man who wished to become famous burned the temple of Ephesian Artemis, not being able to attain that in any other way. He himself has something similar in mind. So great is the craving for fame that has penetrated him to the core. He alleges, however, that he is doing it for the sake of his fellow men, that he may teach them to despise death and endure what is fearsome. For my part, I should like to ask, not him but you, whether you wish malefactors to become his disciples in this fortitude of his and to despise death and burning and similar terrors. No, you would not, I am very sure. How then is Proteus to draw distinctions in this matter and to benefit the good without making the bad more adventurous and daring?
Yeah, I just say just real quick, this idea of despising death, I think we get this in some of the English translations, even in our New Testament. No, it's despising the shame, this kind of thing. That the word there probably needs to be translated different. And it's more like disregarding, that kind of thing, disregarding death or not fearing it, not taking it into account as a thing to be worried about.
Right.
This kind of thing. And despising kind of throws it off a little bit in our normal English.
Gotcha. Yeah, something we all naturally, encounter. Nevertheless, suppose it possible that only those will present themselves at this affair who will see it to their advantage. Once more, I shall question you. Would you desire your children to become imitators of such a man? You will not say so. But why did I ask that question when even of his disciples themselves, not one would imitate him? This is a good question, right? In fact, the thing for which one might blame Theagenes most of all is that although he copies the man in everything else, talking about him copying Proteus, he does not follow his teacher and take the road with him. Now that he is off, as he says, to join Heracles. Why? He has the opportunity to attain absolute felicity instanter by plunging headlong. Here he is. Dude, the wording, man. The wording. Oh, he has the opportunity to attain absolute felicity instanter by plunging headlong into the fire with him. Oh my gosh. This is so good. Emulation is not a matter of wallet, staff, and mantle. All this safe and easy and within anyone's power. One should emulate the consummation and culmination. Build upon this. Bro!
He's still talking. This is so...
Oh my gosh, dude. Can you imagine? That's the most scathing thing. All the cult members are standing around and he's going, all right, I'm mocking him He's about to get even worse because he's going to describe how hesitant this guy, dude. Could you imagine being in front of a fire and you're like, damn it, I told everyone I'm going to do this thing. I don't want to do this thing. You know what I mean? And now he's telling the cult members, you need to do this, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is so good. One should emulate the consummation and culmination. Build a pyre of figwood logs as green as can be and stifle oneself in the smoke of them. Fire itself belongs not only to Heracles and Asclepius, but to doers of sacrilege and murder, who can be seen enduring it by judicial sentence. Therefore, it is better to employ smoke, which would be peculiar and belong only to you and your like. Besides, if Heracles really did venture any such act, he did it because he was ailing, because the blood of the centaur, as the tragedy tells us, was preying upon him. But for what reason does this man throw himself bodily into the fire? Oh, yes, a demon. Is this a demon a straight?
To demonstrate. I think it's just there's something wrong with the trends.
Okay, I'm like, what the hell? Yeah, to demonstrate. Maybe there's some pun in the original language for like daemon or demon. I'm not sure. Maybe that, I don't know. But to demonstrate his fortitude, like the Brahmins, for Theagenes thought fit to compare him with them, just as if there could not be fools and notoriety seekers even among the Indians. Well, then, let him at least imitate them. They do not leap into the fire. So Onascritus says Alexander's navigator who saw Calanus burning. But when they have built their pyre, they stand close beside it, motionless, and endure being toasted. Then, mounting upon it, they cremate themselves decorously without the slightest alteration of the position in which they are lying. In this man's case, what great thing will it be if he tumbles in and dies in the sudden grip of the fire? It is not beyond expectation that he will jump out half consumed, unless, as they say, he is going to see to it that the pyre is deep down in a pit. There are people who say that he has even changed his mind and is telling certain dreams. This is so good. Oh, dude. Poor Proteus. Oh, man. So now he's telling certain dreams to the effect that Zeus does not permit pollution of a holy place.
He's trying to make an exit from this plan.
And we've seen other cult leaders do this. Muhammad did this with his nephew. He walks in a tent and sees his nephew's wife, according to one of the hadith, and was like, whoa. So then he goes and tells his nephew, Allah has told me in a revelation that you're supposed to give her to me. And according to the hadith, he literally does the very thing that the revelation from Allah does grant him. Yeah. So, again, when the cult member can bring up revelation, we saw this with Joseph Smith. When he was trying to bring polygamy into the whole fold and make it divine, Emma, his wife, wasn't having it. And in fact, him and two other men were in a room when supposedly he was getting this revelation and quoting Abraham from the Old Testament to bring up, he had several wives and God's telling me I can. Emma was told through the tradition, Emma had said after ripping the paper that he wrote saying God said this, she said, well, if you have many wives, I'll have many husbands. It pissed him off, according to the tradition. So, cult leader 101 right here, right? Oh, Zeus told me not to permit the holy places. Can't do that. So, but let him be assured on that score. I would take my oath to it that no one of the gods would be angry if Peregrinus should die a rogue's death. Moreover, it is not easy for him to withdraw now, for his cynic associates are urging him on and pushing him into the fire and inflaming his resolution. They will not let him shirk it. If he should pull a couple of them into the fire along with him when he jumps in, that would be the only nice thing about his performance. Oh my God. Bro, That's terrible. Oh man, that's great. That's great. Like, imagine no, and he's grabbing a couple others with him, and next thing you know, they're all burning there. Oh, I have heard that he no longer deigns to be called Proteus, but has changed his name to Phoenix because the phoenix, the Indian bird, is said to mount a pyre when it is very far advanced in age. Indeed, he even manufactures myths and repeats certain oracles, ancient, of course, to the purport that he is to become a guardian spirit of the night. It is plain, too, that he already covets altars and expects to be imaged in gold. By Zeus, it would be nothing unnatural if, among all the dolts, I love these terms, man. If among all the dolts that there are, some should be found to assert that they were relieved of quartan fevers by him, and that in the dark they had encountered the guardian spirit of the night. Then, too, these accursed disciples of his will make an oracular shrine, I suppose, with a holy of holies at the site of the pyre, because the famous Proteus, son of Zeus, the progenitor of his name, was given to soothsaying. I pledge my word, too, that priest of his will be appointed with whips of branding irons or some such flummy diddle. What the hell? Flummy diddle. Who the hell writes these words, dude? With whips or branding irons or some such flummy diddle, or even that a nocturnal mystery will be got up in his honor, including a torch festival at the site of the pyre.
Yeah. Notice there that he's getting like this act of him dying as a spectacle is he's going to be translated to become a deity. He's the son of Zeus, right? And they're going to build temples there. And he's making a mockery of all this. He's like, this is what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to become this really famous, elevated to divinity through this stunt. And anyway, this is hilarious.
It's all just flummy diddle. Flummy diddle. By Zeus, it would be nothing unnatural if, among all the dolts... Oh, we already read that. Sorry. All right. Diogenes, as I have been told by one of my friends, recently said that the Sibyl had made a prediction about all this. In fact, he quoted the verses from memory. But when the time shall come that Proteus, noblest of cynics, kindleth fire in the precinct of Zeus, our lord of the thunder, leapeth into the flame, and cometh to lofty Olympus. Then do I bid all alike who eat the fruit of the plowland honor to pay unto him that walketh abroad in the nighttime, greatest of spirits, throned with Heracles and Hephaestus. That is what Diogenes alleges he heard from the Sibyl. But I will quote him one of the oracles of Bacchus dealing with these matters. Bacchus expresses himself as follows with a very excellent moral. Nay, when the time shall come that a cynic with names that are many leaps into the roaring flame, soul stirred by a passion for glory, he's got to be inventing this. This is good. This is so good. Lucian's making this shit up. He's pretending that someone named Bacchus is I wonder what the name Bacchus even means now. This is so good. So he's saying he heard it from the Sibyl, but I'll quote him one of the oracles of Bacchus dealing with these matters. So imagine he makes this up, okay? And he's saying, here's another a divine oracle about this guy. Nay, when the time shall come that a cynic with names that are many leaps into roaring flames, soul stirred by a passion for glory, then it is meet that the others, the jackals that follow his footsteps, mimic the latter end of the wolf that has taken departure. But if a dastard among them shall shun the might of Hephaestus, let him be pelted with stones forthwith by all the Achaeans, learning the frigid fool to abjure all fiery speeches. He that has laden his wallet with gold by taking of usance, is that how you say that? Usance?
Yes.
Usance. Thrice 5 talents he owns in the lovely city of Patras. Dude, he had to make that up. What do you think, gentlemen, that Bacchus is a worse soothsayer than the Sibyl? It is high time then for these wondrous followers of Proteus to look about for a place in which to aerify themselves, for that is the name they give to cremation. So he keeps running with this. Why aren't they doing what their master's doing? You know what
And just to remind everyone, he's still going. Like this
is all a speech. I mean, this guy's like, he's still shitting on the poor dude. Okay. When he had said these words, all the bystanders shouted, "Let them be burned right now. They deserve the flames." And the man got down again laughing, but Nestor failed not to mark the din. I mean, Theagenes. When he heard the shouting, he came at once, took the platform, and fell to ranting and telling countless malicious tales about the man who had just got down. I do not, and he's talking about himself. So Theagenes is now talking crap about Lucian, it sounds like. I do not know what that excellent gentleman's name was. For my part, I left him splitting his lungs and went off to see the athletes. As the Hellenodicae were said to be already in the plethrium. Well, there you have what happened at Elis. And when we reached Olympia, the rear chamber was full of people criticizing Proteus or praising his purpose, so that most of them even came to blows finally. Proteus himself appeared, escorted by a countless multitude after the contest of the heralds, and had somewhat to say about himself, telling of the life that he had led and the risks that he had run, and of all the troubles that he had endured for philosophy's sake. His speech was protracted, though I heard but a little on account of the number of bystanders, afterwards fearing to be crushed in such a throng, because I saw this happening to many. I went away, bidding a long farewell to the sophist enamored of death, who was pronouncing his own funeral oration before his demise. This much, however, I overheard. He said that he wanted to put a tip of gold on a golden bow, for one who had lived as Heracles should die like Heracles and be commingled with the ether. And I wish, said he, to benefit mankind by showing them the way in which one should despise death. Wherefore all men ought to play Philocletes to me. I hope I'm saying that right. The more witless among the people began to shed tears and call out, "Preserve your life for the Greeks." But the more virile part bawled, "Carry out your purpose," by which the old man was immoderately upset, because he hoped that all would cling to him and not give him over to the fire, but remain him in life, against his will naturally. That "carry out your purpose" assailing him quite unexpectedly caused him to turn still paler, although his color was already deathly, and even to tremble slightly, so that he brought his speech to an end. So what's happening here, Dr. Miller?
He's just getting afraid. He's hoping the crowd will rescue him from his stupid plan. And
and he's still here.
Getting late in the day. Yeah.
Do it, asshole.
Yeah.
Just do it already. You don't want me to save my life? Right. Yeah, this is getting good. I love this. You can imagine, I expect, how I laughed, for it was not fitting to pity a man so desperately in love with glory beyond all others who are driven by the same fury. Anyhow, he was being escorted by crowds and getting his fill of glory as Lai gazed at the number of his admirers, not knowing, poor wretch, that men on their way to the cross, that's an interesting jab there, that men on their way to the cross or in the grip of the executioner have many more at their heels. So he mentions the cross. That's a maybe even a Christian kind of, mention in some way. What do you think?
Yeah, quite possibly.
Soon the Olympic Games were ended, the most splendid Olympics that I have seen, though it was then the fourth time that I had been a spectator. As it was not easy to secure a carriage, since many were leaving at the same time, I lingered on against my will, and Peregrinus kept making postponements, but at last had announced a night on which he would stage his cremation. So, as one of my friends had invited me to go along, I arose at midnight and took the road to Harpina, where the pyre was. This is quite 20 furlongs from Olympia as one goes past the hippodrome towards the east. As soon as we arrived, we found a pyre built in a pit about 6 feet deep. It was composed mostly of torchwood, and the interstices filled with brush, that it might take fire quickly. When the moon was rising, for she too had to witness this glorious deed, he came forward, dressed in his usual fashion, and with him the leaders of the Cynics, in particular, the gentleman from Patras, with a torch, no bad understudy. Proteus too was bearing a torch. Men approaching from this side and that kindled the fire into a very great flame, since it came from torchwood and brush. Peregrinus, and give me your close attention now. Laying aside the wallet, the cloak, and that noble Heracles club, stood there in a shirt that was downright filthy. Then he requested incense to throw on the fire. When someone had proffered it, he threw it on, and gazing towards the south, even the south too had to do with the show. He said, spirits of my mother and my father, receive me with favor. With that, he leaped into the fire. He was not invisible, however, but was encompassed by flames, which had risen to a great height. Once more, I see you laughing, Cronius, my urban friend, at the denouement of the play. For my
denouement.
Denouement. Okay, denouement of the play. For my own part, when he called upon the guardian spirits of his mother, I did not criticize him very strongly. But when he invoked those of his father as well, I recalled the tales that had been told about his murder, and I could not control my laughter. The cynics, the cynics stood about the pyre, not weeping to be sure, but silently evincing a certain amount of grief as they gazed into the fire, until my gorge rose at them, and I said, "Let us go away, you simpletons. It is not an agreeable spectacle to look at an old man who has been roasted, getting our nostrils filled with a villainous reek. Or are you waiting for a painter to come and picture you as the companions of Socrates in prison are portrayed beside him?" This is like, you want to be part of the fame. You know what I mean? They were indignant and reviled me, and several even took their sticks. Then, when I threatened to gather up a few of them and throw them into the fire so that they might follow their master, they checked themselves and kept the peace. As I returned, I was thinking busily, my friend, reflecting what a strange thing love of glory is, how this passion alone is inescapable or unescapable, even by those who are considered wholly admirable, let alone that man who in other respects had led a life that was insane and reckless and not undeserving of the fire. Then I encountered many people coming out to see the show themselves, for they expected to find him still alive. You see, on the day before, this is so good. This is, ladies and gentlemen, if you've made it this far, or you're just showing up, this is getting juicy. This is where William Lane Craig and all the apologists need to stop smoking the pipe on this one. All right, they need to pay attention. You see, on the day before, it had been given out that he would greet the rising sun, as in fact they say the Brahmins do, before mounting the pyre. Well, I turned back most of them by saying the deed had already been done, or had been done already. Those to whom it was not in itself highly desirable to see the actual spot anyhow and gather up some relic of the fire. You want to comment on that before we keep going, or?
No, it's setting things up here. It's folks, wanting, reflecting on what had happened. They're coming to see, and rumors are starting to, spread in terms of what meaning all this had.
And the fact that I turned back most of them by saying the deed had been done already. And then, those that turned back, obviously there were some that were like, no, I want to go and actually pick up like a relic of the fire, find some of the char, things like that. But so yeah. Lucian's telling them, look, it's already been done. Most people are turning around. In that business, I assure you, my friend, I had no end of trouble telling the story to all while they asked questions and sought exact information. So the people who are coming out to this pyre that are stopping to ask for information, he's telling them. Whenever I noticed a man of taste, I would tell him the facts without embellishment, as I have to you. But for the beneft of the dullards agog to listen, this is his brilliant language here. The dullards agog to listen, I would thicken the plot a bit on my own account, saying, this is what Lucian would tell him, when the pyre was kindled and Proteus flung himself bodily in, a great earthquake first took place, accompanied by a bellowing of the ground, and then a vulture flying up out of the midst of the flames went off to heaven, saying in human speech with a loud voice, I am through with earth, to Olympus I fare. They were wonderstruck and blessed themselves with a shudder. I could imagine the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and asked me whether the vulture sped eastwards or westwards. I made them whatever reply occurred to me. I know you have something to say about this.
No, I think you're going to see. So he's spreading a rumor, basically an apotheosis or a translation fable of what had happened with Proteus. He's willing to indulge them. He's just saying, here, if you, the dullards or whatever, these are the people that are ready to eat this up, right? And so he's like, here you go. Here's what happened to him. And so he's having a bit of fun. And so let's see what happens with that story.
Okay. On my return to the festival, I came upon a gray-haired man whose face, I assure you, inspired confidence in addition to his beard and his general air of consequence, telling all about Proteus and how, since his cremation, he had beheld him, eyewitness, he saw him in white raiment a little while ago and had just now left him walking about cheerfully in the portico of the Seven Voices, wearing a garland of wild olive. Then on top of it all, he put the vulture, swearing that he himself had seen it flying up out of the pyre, when I myself had just previously let it fly to ridicule fools and dullards.
It's so good. It's so good. And this just shows how fast a legend, a translation fable legend, it's basically, these are people who are reflecting on the death of this guy. And they're already cooking up tall tales about what that meant, that he was being translated to divinity and that he was flying off to Olympus and this kind of thing. One of them has a postmortem encounter with him, sees him on the portico of the Seven Voices, which is basically the lane there that's kind of the precinct lane for where all the big temples were at in Olympia there, in terms of the pantheon. And so he's there walking among the basically in the holy places, among the gods now, so to speak, in terms of like drawing in worship. And this guy comes forward and says inspired confidence because he had a big beard, I guess, but yeah, here he is making a confession, just like you get with early Christians, that basically, and what you get with the Caesars and what you get with a whole number of others, where you've got eyewitness testimony and sworn witnesses coming forward and indicating that, that they had seen so-and-so in their postmortem state, or they had seen them ascend to heaven, et cetera, et cetera. And so met them on the road in the case of Claudius and Augustus and a whole number of other emperors, and sworn testimony in front of other people. And so these are the tropes that you see decorating the New Testament all over the place. And right. So that were part and parcel with the larger translation fable legend trope that you see growing throughout a 1,000-year period in Mediterranean antiquity. And so Christianity just being, or the Jesus legend being one permutation of that.
Yeah, I love that. Again, they either made it up, so they're full of shit, or they're tripping and they're delusional. So I tend to go with the old man likely made it up, but then again, he might be so delusionally, I can't go back and assess him, right? But it sounds like the fact that Lucian made up the vulture, made up the story about this earthquake and the vulture and the flying up into heaven, and then the old man the next day regurgitates that, you got to think that there's some bullshitting going on. I don't see any other way around that.
Well, it's beyond that. Even, I mean, you could see the flame, like fanning the flame. Lucian kind of drops basically a seed of a story, and now you've got a post-mortem appearance with him walking with white, garland of white of olive and this kind of thing, and he's fresh as daisies. There, people just watched him burn to death in a giant bonfire, and there he is, fresh as daisies, walking along, and in kind of perfect, state. And so he's in a divine state at that point. He's a translated demigod at that point.
You've got a great earthquake. You've got a heavenly vulture, or heavenly flying up right to Mount Olympus. Super powerful stuff. You've got them blessing themselves, so this very religious. Oh my gosh, did he go east or west? Which way did he fly? Like, man, he's mocking the hell out of these superstitious people.
Right.
And I think that you pointed out this overlaps with what we're reading in the Gospels, and people just milk it, just suck it up. They get it. They believe it. It's that simple. I did it. I mean, okay. I guess I'll keep going, and we'll wrap this up. Cool. Imagine what is likely to happen in his honor hereafter. How many bees will not settle on the place? What is it? Sisyphus?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll just say Sisyphus.
I'd have to see the original to see what they're trying to translate.
Gotcha. What Sisyphus will not sing upon it? What crows will not fly to it, as they did to the tomb of Hesiod, and so forth? Dude, I love how he's like invoking these ancient tales and like how people were deifying these people right out the gate. And by the way, your strongest point in this is, notice 24 hours later, the next day, there's already someone saying they saw it. They saw it. So when people talk about legend or myth can't develop fast, like less than a day, an old man with full confidence beard has all these people believing he saw something that Lucian made up yesterday. The fact that, that's a lie.
The translation legend would have been very, very early. And a lot of people talk about 1 Corinthians 15 and how that's so early and this kind of thing. That's late, for translation legend. That they're talking about, what would that be, 10, 15 years? Some people speculate 3 years or whatever. No, it probably would have been within weeks. That people were cooking up these stories. Potentially, had their the disciples lost the founder of their movement, and they would be exalting him through this sort of legendary trope and saying, no, he's ascended to heaven and this kind of thing. That might have been, it's perfectly in line with the entire trope for that to happen immediately. It doesn't require decades and centuries and this kind of thing.
Yeah, it's cicadus, I think, which are like a flying ladybug type chirping bird or bug, is what Esmil's saying. So that's interesting. Okay, worth knowing. Sorry, I stopped there. So as to statues, I know that many will be set up right soon by the Eleans themselves, and also by the other Greeks to whom he said he had sent letters. The story is that he dispatched missives to almost all the famous cities, testamentary dispositions, so to speak, and exhortations and prescriptions, and he appointed a number of ambassadors for this purpose from among his comrades, styling them messengers from the dead and underworld couriers. So ended that poor wretch Proteus, a man who, to put it briefly, never fixed his gaze on the verities, but always did and said everything with a view to glory and the praise of the multitude, even to the extent of leaping into fire when he was sure not to enjoy the praise because he could not hear it. I shall add one more thing to my story before I stop, in order that you may be able to have a good laugh. For, of course, you have long known that other tale of mine, as you heard it from me at once. When on my return from Syria, I recounted how I sailed from the Troad in his company, from the Troad in his company, and about his self-indulgence on the voyage, and the handsome boy whom he had persuaded to turn cynic, that he too might have and Alcibiades, butchered it probably, and how, when we were disturbed during the night in mid-Aegean by a tempest that descended and raised an enormous sea, this wondrous person, who was thought to be superior to death, fell to welling along with the women. So he's telling about how Proteus is crying, like afraid of death, right?
Yeah, I think he's kind of switching topics here to some extent, but yeah.
It sounds like they're on a boat on the sea, and like there's a storm that comes, and he's terrified to the point where this wondrous person who was thought to be superior to death fell to welling along with the women. Well, a short time before his end, about 9 days it may be, having eaten more than enough, I suppose, he was sick during the night and was taken with a very violent fever. This was told me by Alexander the physician, who had been called in to see him. He said that he found him rolling on the ground, unable to stand the burning, pleading very passionately for a drink of cold water, but that he could not give it to him. Moreover, he told him, he said that death, if he absolutely wanted him, had come to his door spontaneously, so that it would be well to go along without asking any favor from the fire. And Proteus replied, but that way would not be so notable, being common to all men. So it sounds like, if I'm trying to decipher this, it sounds like he was getting sick, and that maybe there's a sense in which it's hard for me to like interpret what's going on here, but maybe he's already going to die. So I want to be more notably dying instead of a fever that seems to have gotten him. I'm not sure.
It's just, I think it does point out, it highlights this idea of like him wanting to die as a stunt that's spectacular rather than in common form. And so it's just kind of a window into Proteus's mentality.
Okay. And the last paragraph is, that is Alexander's story. And I myself, not many days previously, saw him smeared with ointment in order that so Alexander's, that's a different guy than Proteus, right?
Yeah, well, it's related to Proteus. What was it? They said that he's the guy that this was told to me by Alexander the physician.
Got it. Okay, yeah. Okay. And I myself, because I know there's another Alexander, I believe, that he's a false prophet, if I'm not mistaken. There's another guy that he does a whole writing on that is a false prophet, but I think his name's Alexander. I can't remember. In the chat, I'm sure there's people who've read Lucian way more than me who would know the name of the other guy. And I myself, not many days previously, saw him smeared with ointment in order that the sharp salve might relieve his vision by making him shed tears. Do you get the idea? Aeacus is reluctant to receive people with weak eyes. It is as if a man about to go up to the cross should nurse the bruise on his finger. What do you think Democritus would have done had he seen this? Would not he have laughed at the man as roundly as he deserved? And yet, where could he have got that much laughter? Well, my friend, you may have your laugh also, particularly when you hear the rest of them admiring him. Man, Lucian was absolutely awesome.
It's a roast. Yeah, and I mean, in I think it was Priam, near Troas, they have more than one ancient writer describes this statue that was built in Proteus's honor there. That Proteus was born, it was kind of like his hometown, as we kind of read there in Priam. That's the north western corner of like Asia Minor there. So it's basically almost like Paul country there, right? Where all this is going on. And there's this statue that they have there that supposedly could talk and was giving oracles. It was a statue of Proteus, and that the legend was that it would sometimes talk and give oracles to people. If you stood there long enough, you might hear one.
Wow, this
kind of thing. And so he was a bit of a celebrity in certain circles. Aulus Gellius, as one of his fans there, writes positively about him. He's a great philosopher and this kind of thing.
Want me to read it?
Yeah, you can read that. It's not too long.
When I was at Athens, I met a philosopher named Peregrinus who was later surnamed Proteus, a man of dignity and fortitude, living in a hut outside the city. Visiting him often, I heard him say many things that were truly helpful and noble. One saying in particular, I remember, he used to declare that a wise man would not commit a sin, even if he knew that neither gods nor men would ever learn of it. For one ought to refrain from wrong, he said, not for fear of punishment or disgrace, but for love of justice, honesty, and duty. However, those not sufficiently endowed by nature or training to resist sin by their own willpower will be more inclined to sin whenever they think their wrongdoing can be concealed and punished with impunity. But, he said, if men know that nothing at all can remain hidden for long, they will sin more reluctantly and discreetly. Therefore, he would have ever on his lips these verses of Sophocles, the wisest of poets. See to it that you hide nothing, since time, being all observant and all hearing, exposes all things. Another of the ancient poets, whose name escapes me, also said that truth is the daughter of time. That's a hell of a thing to say with what Lucian just wrote.
Well, you could also see there, if you kind of look through it, like this was a guy that was an architect of earliest Christian texts and interpretations, and so he was up in the upper echelon of that. Proteus was, and
wow.
And that's his thinking, is that people need stories in order to behave well, unless they've got sufficient philosophical sophistication. Then they can do it for the right reasons, but otherwise they need stories and the fear of the gods watching them and all these kinds of things, which is basically that's a description of kind of the strategy of the New Testament in some way.
It's kind of interesting too, though, like to see to it you hide nothing since time. I mean, was he hiding his fact that he murdered his father? Was he hiding the fact of the child that he did that cruel stuff to? You know what I mean? Like, that's wild. Then you have Tatian. And by the way, this also makes you question, like, if this is the testimony, this, for example, say we didn't have Lucian's writings at all, and no word of, we might have had some works of his that were burnt by the opposing cult, right? And all we had were these. We might imagine this guy's noble. Listen to his sayings. Listen to what he's teaching. But dude, how much material by people that are like put on a pedestal within the cult have these real backgrounds, like modern church teachers today getting caught, with the prostitute with the methamphetamine and prostitute in the local hotel, getting caught, doing S&M, crazy stuff that they've been secretly doing. You know what I mean? Like, right.
Well, that's what we get with the Jesus movement. We get the promotional propaganda texts. We don't get Lucian. It'd be interesting if we found another text by Lucian that was the passing of Jesus Christ or something like this. And what would be the other side of that story?
Right.
And you kind of wonder, because you can already see what his opinion is of people that die as a spectacle, and this kind of thing.
It couldn't have been nice. Then we have Tatian, you said, and Athenagoras of Athens.
Tatian was Justin Martyr's student, his disciple, so to speak.
They claim to want for nothing, yet like Proteus, they actually need a leather courier for their wallet, a weaver for their cloak, a woodcutter for their staff, and even the rich to support them, and a cook for their gluttony. That's not a good memory.
Yeah, so there's a scathing perspective on Proteus. Why would he do that? Well, like I said, it's a competing cult, and this is 2nd century stuff. And so they're reflecting on kind of the front page news that had previously happened, and putting their own perspective on that, and saying and pointing out that, hey, this guy was not living quite the austere life that some people might guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then you got this one. For example, in one place, Troas, there are statues of a certain Nerolinus, a man of our time, and in Parium, there are statues of Alexander and Proteus. Both the tomb and statue of Alexander still stand in the Forum. Of those of Proteus, Proteus, the man who threw himself into the fire by Olympia. The statue of Proteus is likewise said to utter oracles, There's your point. Yet it is Nerolinus and Proteus and Alexander who work these wonders. The material is merely bronze, meaning it is demons misleading them.
Yeah, Athenagoras, and that's really also contemporary 2nd century.
So there's another one, Tertullian. Even philosophers have shown contempt for suffering. Heraclitus, smeared with dung, burned himself. Empedocles leapt into the fires of Etna. And Peregrinus not long ago threw himself on a funeral pyre. Women, too, have despised the flames. Dido did so lest after the death of a beloved husband, she be forced to remarry. And likewise the wife of Hasdrubal, who Carthage, being in flames and seeing her husband at Scipio's feet, hurled herself with her children into her burning fatherland. Damn.
Yeah, it's Dido, but yeah.
Dido, sorry.
Yeah, again, it's just showing this is a theme that there isn't. It's not just an isolated person, and I would point out to the viewers that Jesus' death as a stunt also fits into this larger frame of tragic noble deaths or whatever, of ascetical spectacle, kind of falling all the way back to, even you could say, Heracles, you could say Socrates drinking his cup, and so forth. And so there's a long tradition of this that it moved all the way, and there were even examples of this in early Judaism as well, with the 7 martyrs and the 4 Maccabees and 2 Maccabees and all of this. And so
last one, Simonides, however, ready to escape from his life as from a cruel tyrant and laughing at suddenly worldly reversals, stood unmoved amid the flames, imitating that celebrated philosopher Peregrinus, surnamed Proteus, who, having decided to depart from life at the quinquennial Olympic festival in sight of all Greece, mounted a funeral pyre that he himself had built and was consumed by the flames. So here's another person, Simonides, who did this.
Yeah, here, scroll over to the left there, and we'll see with the. Yeah, that's
a little bit.
Emanius. You could see there the dates and stuff, but this is he was a historian, kind of a late ancient historian.
Wow.
Yeah, it just records it in there. And like I said, there's also a text in Eusebius. It doesn't survive except for in like translation, like Armenian, but there is that his Chronicon. There's a text it's just we only get fragments of and translations and stuff. And I think Jerome records some of it too. But also, so it just shows kind of the blast radius. So people knew this guy. It wasn't like this was off in some corner somewhere. This was a major, it was a big stunt at the freaking Olympics,
Yeah.
And so
I should have come with one of the sources, but either way, just to mention, one of the Christians is mocking the other philosophies that are within the mystery schools. I can't remember who it was exactly. Might be Tertullian or somebody. In it, he said, we have seen with our own eyes at plays, like the actual reenactments of plays, where in the stunt, they burn a real person commits himself to the pyre in the play. Like during a play, not just like, hey, look at me, but like they're reenacting Heracles in the play and they actually burn themselves alive. And so I can't remember what source. I'd love to bring it up, but this seems to be a path that some of these people went down, and crazy, honestly crazy. So
we've talked about martyrdom on here and, other, early Christian martyrdom spectacles and texts and this kind of thing. And so this is all in line with that. And it's this is kind of the supreme manifestation of ascesis, the kind of the ascetical commitments of folks. And this was a larger trend. It wasn't just the early Christians. This was a much larger trend that was rooted in the philosophical traditions of the Mediterranean world at that time. And so it seems alien to modern folks largely, that kind of that someone would take their own lives. And it really is, I think, the idea that you would be dedicated to something that would violate your own most core instinct of self-preservation. And from our standpoint, that's the definition of insanity in some way, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. But this was it was a trend in the ancient world to see this as impressive in some way. And so, when the Gospels kick off with John the Baptist eating locusts and girded with loincloth and all this stuff and wild honey and living out in the middle of nowhere, that he would have been looked like a rock star, like somebody just amazing out there. Like, look at this guy, because he's embodying that ascesis. He's ascetical. He's a renunciant in some way. And that explains why. And it seems odd to, especially Protestant Christians, like the ascetical kind of trends that you see in the first 3, 4, 5 centuries of Christianity seem just completely aliens, because they extract the New Testament out of that ancient context and bring it forward to Luther and Europe and, all the stuff that goes on later. And that ascetical, radical kind of posture in direction, orientation that was going on in the earliest Christian records, it becomes decontextualized in so many ways. That when Jesus said, if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off, this kind of thing. They taught me in seminary that was not to be taken literally. That was a figurative language and this kind of thing. But if you go back and read the people that are castrating themselves and so forth, the earliest Christians, Origen and so many others that are treating their own bodies as kind of a battleground for transcendence and this kind of thing. It seems completely alien, the fasting and all these, extreme manifestations of the early Christians. It seems like they're taking a strange turn when you look at those texts from a Protestant perspective. But when you look at the larger landscape of antiquity, no, not at all. This was completely in line with the direction the New Testament was registering, and all the other manifestations are just part of that larger wave that's coming across that period in the larger Roman period cultures. And so,
oh, I love this stuff. We had another super chat. I want to leave Solera Knight out. Burning Man is a pagan Wicca thing, right? I don't know.
I've never been to the Burning Man. Have you gone, Derek?
No.
I've heard tales.
Yeah. Was there an earthquake and a falcon in it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I think he's talking about the Celts. They would make a wicker, what was it? Some sort of edifice or something, and trap a bunch of people in there and then burn the whole thing. This is the ancient Celts.
Absolutely. Look, I love you, man. I appreciate you coming and hanging out. I said I needed to talk about this and to read the Lucian of Samosata stuff. This was we had a hoot on the phone, and I was like, okay, people need to hear why and understand. You might want to go back and reread this and slowly pick this apart. Get a commentary, read what's going on here, what the illusions are, what are the myths and names, the philosophers he's dropping, and why that's significant to his point. This guy's learned. You can tell Lucian knows his shit. But not only is he learned, he's just so witty. He's so sharp. It's rare to find anyone who's got such observations. You mentioned one other person who had a strong observation. Who was that source?
Well, there's Seneca. Like I said, the pumpkinification of Claudius is a fantastic read. Philostratus has it's called the ass. Basically, it's you've got this individual that gets turned by a witch into a donkey, and then he travels around the Roman world as a donkey. And it's similar. It's not really so much to burn any particular satirical in that way, but it's more just the same sort of humor, though, where you just go into a fit of laughing because of the language that's being applied and what's going on there. You realize, okay, there were people in the ancient world that knew how to write too, and
right.
wrote great stories, and that's one of my favorites to read. So
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Everybody go get his book. Go get Dr. Miller's book. Let me pop that joker up here again. Again, go drop him a wonderful review. It means the world to him that his work is obviously read. And if you read this material, I promise you, you're going to walk away enlightened. He covers a lot of awesome material. Chapter 1, he's kind of laying the groundwork to point out Christians saw this. And then chapter 2, he takes you to a gallery of 70-something examples that match these 15 criteria, or if you will, details within translation fables that go way, way, way back. We're talking about Aristeas of Proconesus and all of this. And then journeys with you through the Roman cults, contemporaneous eyewitness stuff. Then he goes to the Gospels. I mean, when you walk away from the book, you can't view the Gospels without seeing this clear pattern that's going on that he's identified. So I hope you'll get a copy of it. Go read it for yourself. It's good. It's a good tool to have too. It's not like a one-time read. It's like you will be referencing this for that gallery. You will be referencing this just to get the 15 tropes he's identified, the parallel charts he does between Romulus and Jesus, the demigod births from Apollo and Zeus. There's so many interesting things he has in there. So make sure you get a copy. Is there any final words from you, Dr. Miller? I know we've gone long enough and you've listened to me read long enough. Thanks for being a trooper, sticking it out this long.
I enjoyed that very much. I hope a lot of people are able to view this. I know that we had some people come along for the ride in the live stream, and you'll probably post this on the channel. But I really want to promote Lucian, and just I feel like that this is a lens through which to see earliest Christianity refracted. Many of the themes are built out in different ways, and it really does fill in the gaps in terms of what we're not seeing in the New Testament, but is part of the larger kind of ancient mind, that where these texts would have landed and how they were thinking, and how the larger culture was thinking when Christianity came on the scene and landed within that kind of operating system, that cultural grammar of that time. And you could see how Jesus would have been processed by his earliest converts and devotees in terms of the spread of the religion into the 2nd century. And so, and that speaks to the intentionality of these texts and what they were meant to convey. Right. They obviously weren't satire, but you can see through that refracted. If you give it enough thought, you could see through that just how. What's the other side of this? What would the devotees have thought of these stories in that context? And how would they have, how did this operate culturally in that world where it's the agency of these texts ended up eclipsing the entire mythosystem of antiquity in some way. And it's because it's engaging with that culture at such a granular level, just as we saw through that text. It's by seeing that its relevance in the larger Greco-Roman world that you can see why it spread and how and through what mechanics socially and culturally. And
Brilliant observations. Thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, hit the like, share this joker around. I really hope to see you there on our next live stream. Get his book. Let us know in the comment section. What did you think was the funniest in the Lucian's takedown of Proteus? Again, thank you so much, Dr. Miller.
You bet. Good seeing you, Derek. Good hanging out with you.
You as well. Ladies and gentlemen, never forget, we are MythVision.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.